WTOB listeners. This is For the Record with Greenwood Law. I'm Dylan Greenwood here with Harold Eustache, and we're excited to bring you another episode of For the Record with Greenwood Law. But we want to announce and let everybody know this will be our next to the last episode of our program. We've really enjoyed our time here on WTOB, but we're going to take a little bit of a break for a bit. But we've appreciated all the people who've followed us and listened and helped make this thing possible. So, we really appreciate that, but we want to let everybody know out there what was going on. But today's episode, Harold, is going to be another kind of holiday-related issue. We're here in the holiday season, and I don't know about you, but I think I'm getting an Amazon package about every day.
I am too.
At least. And it may not be Amazon, but it could be Walmart Plus. It could be from any other stores you're shopping online, especially considering, people are still a little leery of shopping in person with the pandemic and everything, which I get. And, online shopping has become such a prevalent thing in our society. And that leads to potential issues of theft around the holidays.
It is one of the biggest issues, I'm sure, biggest concerns for shoppers everywhere that are celebrating this holiday. And, you get that package, and it's that expensive item, it's an iPad or whatever, and you're worried about it. I mean, you're thinking, let me make sure that it's there. And the concern is that somebody may steal it. And for a lot of people, depending on the environment that they live in, that package could be sort of put anywhere, or if they live in an apartment, it could be sort of right in front for people to see. So it is important. Theft is important, of course, during the holidays.
Yeah, and it's theft. It's making sure your packages get there safely and intact as well. I know my brother-in-law keeps a Ring camera on his door, which I know a lot of people do, which is a pretty smart idea, especially considering the topic that we're talking about. It's one of the ways that you could certainly protect yourself. But he went back the footage on that Ring camera one day and saw a delivery person literally sling a package up the stairs outside of his apartment to the second floor. And had the whole thing caught on tape and every bit of it. And that's, depending upon what's coming in the mail,
that can be real. That can be a big deal.
That could be a very big deal. And
there's a lot of ways, and we're going to talk about that. A lot of ways where people can get in trouble. The delivery driver or person that receives a package inadvertently, whoever, there can be some serious implications with regard to packages. So
absolutely, and one of the things that just give a little, I guess some pointers or tidbits if it's possible. I know one of the things that I do personally, if it's something that I feel like I'm going to be concerned about it all day, I don't have it shipped to my home.
Right.
I have it shipped here to the office.
Right.
Because I know someone's always going to be here. And if you have that ability, it's certainly something that we recommend that you do. Or if someone's going to be at home and they can sign for it, that also can be a big deal. So, so it's just those little things, stuff like that can help mitigate this issue a lot. But it doesn't do everything, not at all.
Yeah, and so one of the things is, I'm sure people are wondering, is what happens if somebody steals a package? Can they be charged with something? Well, of course, intuitively you know that that's stealing, and of course that's going to be some sort of criminal offense. But what is it? And in North Carolina, it would be a larceny. And so larceny has several elements, but the important ones to think about for this is that a person, that is coming to your property, taking something, and moving it physically, and they have the intent to permanently deprive, at the time that they're moving it, that property from somebody. And so that would be larceny. It would be charged that way. And it can be either a felony or misdemeanor.
Right. It can. And it's important when you think about larceny, and this is something that I talk about with people quite a bit when they consult with us. It doesn't matter if that piece of property was actually removed entirely.
Right. Very important.
So if a person goes up to a doorstep And let's say there is a Ring camera on there and they're recording the whole thing. Let's say this person that doesn't live there, doesn't have authorization to be there, it's not their package. They go up, they grab the package, they look at it, shake it, see what's going on in there, think, this might be something that I might enjoy. And they take even just one step, holding onto the package. Let's say after that one step, they go, God, this isn't right. I'm not gonna proceed with this. I'm not gonna take this package. And they just put the package down. That person still committed larceny.
Yes, very important. Very, very important, because this happens so much. Believe it, people think that scenario wouldn't happen. It happens a lot in stores. And people are still charged with larceny, and they're like, but I didn't take it. The store got it back. I would say the majority of the time the store gets its stuff back.
Absolutely.
And or however, and it's still larceny. So that's a really, really important point.
No, and don't think that, especially in regards to retail theft, if a store gets its items back, it may not, take away someone getting charged entirely, but it usually is a pretty substantial mitigating factor, and it's something that, I know personally when you bring that up to a DA, it stands out quite a bit. Oh, well, they got the place got their stuff back. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, they're, kind of made whole in a way. We don't have to worry about necessarily getting them restitution. Makes the DA's job a lot easier, that sort of thing. So those things are certainly mitigators for those types of specific cases.
Yeah.
But just like what you were saying, Harold, it can be a misdemeanor, it can be a felony, and the way we, choose that cutoff point here in North Carolina is the value of the item taken. So there's a big difference, the way our laws look at it. There's a big difference between you taking, a stuffed animal that's like a stuffed animal dog that's on somebody's porch in a package that may be like $20 or $30 versus you taking the iPad that's $2,000 and removing that. The cutoff point in North Carolina is $1,000. So anything $999.99 and below is going to be a misdemeanor. Anything $1,000 and above is going to be a felony.
That's right, and so sometimes in court we, because of that cutoff, there are cases where we are arguing about the amount, where the amount is unknown. I can think of one in particular that I had recently that was the amount was unknown as far as the value, and so it mattered a lot because would this be a misdemeanor? Would this be a felony? And so that is an interesting. The thing for a person taking a package is they would know that value, and initially, let's say they take the box and it's just a brown box, but if they win that lottery and it's something expensive, it's going to be a felony no matter what they thought the price was.
Yeah,
so.
And that's sort of the obviously it's not smart to steal people's packages anyway, but there's a certain difference between that box where you're not knowing what you're going to get because it's not size that matters, it's not shape that matters, it's not anything. It is the value of the item that matters, and there are plenty of small things in life that are very high valued pieces of property, and then all of a sudden you're looking at a felony where you'd never imagine that could be the case. Just a quick aside. In our laws, not just in North Carolina state law, but in federal law, when you're looking at theft, value matters there as well. And it can matter from a sentencing standpoint in federal court. It doesn't necessarily matter for the type of crime that someone is convicted of, but it certainly matters with sentencing. I know I was involved in a case one time where it was like an organized theft ring for baby formula. And the original calculations for the loss values, like how much was stolen over the course of that entire case, was quite big. We were able to parse through and figure out that those loss values were inflated, and that what the actual loss value was significantly less, was saved a lot of time for those individuals in that case for their time that they were going to have to spend in federal custody. So it isn't just like a state thing, but it can also have federal implications as well.
Yeah, larceny can go from, like you said, a misdemeanor charge all the way up the chain to something very, very serious.
Absolutely. And we've seen, Harold, that, in larceny, we've kind of implied that it's other people. Maybe it's somebody walking through the neighborhood. Maybe somebody drove to where you live, saw a package out there and was enticed to take it, whatever it may be. But, that's not the only time that larceny occurs. We see times in which larceny occurs by the employees themselves. So this would potentially be by the delivery driver.
Right. So if the delivery driver was to keep one of those packages and not deliver it and take that package home, or simply not deliver it, and the state could prove that he had the intent to permanently deprive the owner of it, that would be larceny. And we've seen those kind of cases charged as larceny, where a delivery driver is keeping those packages or doing something else with them or whatever. That would be larceny. Larceny by the employee comes in a lot of different manifestations, but it is charged quite frequently. It can be as simple as an employee enriching themselves. It could get into some embezzlement territory, but taking some gift cards or whatever. It is something that is charged quite a bit. But any larceny by an employee, it's important for our viewers to know, is a felony. So the amount, it won't matter if you're an employee and you are accused of stealing from an employer, then it's going to be a felony, larceny.
It's basically, it's either a lower level felony or upper level felony.
Right.
And the cutoff there is $100,000.
Right.
So the lower level felony, it's charged initially as a Class H felony here in North Carolina. And based off structured sentencing, someone could serve a maximum of up to 39 months on something like that. And it doesn't matter if it was a pack of gum. It doesn't matter if it was a television. It's looked at the same way. And the only cutoff there, like I said, is that $100,000 mark. Typically, though, and not all the time, but typically, once larceny by the employee hits that amount, a lot of times you're looking at embezzlement.
Yeah.
And so that's how it gets looked at or charged at frequently. But it's the same class level. Larceny by the employee and embezzlement over $100,000. They're
Same.
both the $100,000 cap.
Very serious.
Yes.
Class C felonies. You're talking about a lot of time.
Right. And I think the max there is like 231 months or something. It's a lot on a Class C felony. Just to give our listeners perspective, a Class C felony, the only things that would be above that are like severe sexual assaults and murder.
Right. So that's how serious we take that in North Carolina.
Right.
There's another interesting felony larceny, which is altering or tampering with a security device. It's one that we see get charged sometimes. I kind of wonder about this statute, but it's still used, and it is sometimes when you go to Walmart or Target or Best Buy, there's these security devices on a piece of equipment or on an item, and if you tamper with that, that can be a felony larceny. So let's say you're in the store and you're trying to take that security device off, it can be a felony larceny, and it's charged that way. So that's something for our viewers to look out for and think about when we're talking about larcenies. But I know when we're going back to packages, it's not just state implications, it's federal too.
It is, because, especially if it's, coming through United States Postal Service, if it's coming through a mailbox or a post office box, those are controlled and operated by the federal government. And, that brings with it potential federal penalties as well as North Carolina penalties. And federal mail theft is something that gets investigated and charged. I feel like sometimes it gets sort of joked about. Well, you mess with my mailbox, that's a federal crime. Yeah, technically it is. A lot of times it doesn't get charged. But if somebody is like routinely stealing things through the mail, doing stuff like that, I promise you that the post office has its own inspectors and investigators, and they look at these cases.
Absolutely.
For sure. More often than not, we run into them in our practice, when people receive illicit substances through the mail, that's where you see it happen a lot, which happens more than you would think. But it, it's always surprising to me, but it happens. And, those things do get investigated. So there are certainly federal implications.
Oh, yeah.
But Harold, let me throw you out a scenario. There was a case that happened over in Greenville, North Carolina, towards the coast. And it was a FedEx employee, and he was seen throwing packages into the woods to lighten his delivery load, basically. And this just happened here recently. Just off the top of your head, what do you think this FedEx employee could be facing? You put your prosecutor's hat on.
Well, he could be facing a larceny depending on what his intent was when he was throwing these things in the woods. I mean, if it was to throw it in the woods to permanently deprive, the rightful owner of it, I think he'd be charged with the larceny there. So, larceny is what I think.
And I mean, potentially larceny by the employee for
right,
sure.
larceny by the employee, yeah.
Injury to personal property, maybe.
Sure.
Depending on who that belonged to and whether or not they could identify those people. Obviously, that's a surefire way to probably get fired from
no doubt.
from your job. It's, like I said, that's a recent case here in North Carolina. And I mean, that person is getting prosecuted. Apparently, they were caught red-handed on video, the whole deal, and they're certainly going after them.
It's one of those things. I think now there's a bit of redundancy in the way that packages are delivered, especially with Amazon and some of these other companies where they take pictures. These delivery drivers are very, very accountable for these packages because their job is on the line. So hopefully we won't see too much more of that. But I got a scenario for you. What about if you get a package in the mail, and I think everybody's had this, where it's delivered to you, but it's addressed to somebody else. So let's say you get some huge Amazon package, and it's addressed to somebody else. What do you do, and could you be charged?
You can be charged. You can be charged with a larceny because, that is someone else's property. If you are keeping it with the intention of permanently depriving somebody, then yes, that could be a larceny. It's not your property. It was delivered to you by accident, and you should make steps to try to rectify that, either calling FedEx or Amazon. Now, if Amazon tells you, hey, we've already rectified it, just keep it, it's not worth it to us to have you send it back, fine. That's Amazon's right to do that as the sender. And this does kind of get in these different property rules and how you look at people who send versus receive goods in the mail.
Right.
Where does it actually become that person's property? Is it in transit, or is it, still the person's property of like the sender who sends it? Like,
takes you back to law school a little bit.
Man, it sure does. That's a little rough. But there was a case that reinforced this notion back in 2017, State v. Jones, and basically a defendant was informed of his overpayment of funds from an employer, and he kept them anyway, even though he knew that he was overpaid. And because he didn't make steps to try to rectify that, it was considered a larceny. So that case has been extrapolated out. Just, we've talked about that before, how you try to use cases that are similar in nature, where the belief is if you're keeping packages that belong to someone else, and you aren't making substantial steps forward to try to get that package either back to the carrier, back to the sender, or to the person itself, then you're committing larceny. It's
one way I've seen this happen so much is when people are overpaid by the government, and you're receiving unemployment checks, and essentially you're overpaid because, well, it can be a fraud issue, but you're not technically unemployed anymore or whatever, and you spent this money. It's a larceny, and you can better believe that state government and federal government go after that sort of stuff, and will prosecute that type of case.
You're just joining us here on WTOB. This is For the Record with Greenwood Law. I'm Dylan Greenwood here with Harold Eustache. And we've been talking about theft around the holidays, specifically as it relates to package theft. People are getting a lot of packages throughout the holiday season for gifts and stuff. And, I believe that South Carolina is one of the states here recently that has specifically made this form of theft a different statute, where it's not just larceny, but it's kind of an enhancement for you doing this sort of thing. And that is a bit of a trend, and I understand.
I can see why.
I can too.
People take that. I mean, I would, and I think most people would take, stealing the package just.
Harold, how often when you're getting an Amazon package, you looking that thing up throughout the day to figure out where that delivery
all the time.
Exactly.
All
You're excited. You want it to get there,
right.
and then all of a sudden you get home and you're like, where's my package?
Right.
And then you got to, call the police and deal with all that stuff, and it's not cool.
No, it is. It's a huge deal. Speaking of theft, there's another type of theft that people maybe don't think about, but you could steal someone's person, someone's identity.
Exactly.
And that's
credit cards, identity theft. Those are things that, the ripple effects of that are things that you can feel for years.
Yeah.
And those are all felonious activities by somebody.
And so identity theft in North Carolina is a separate offense from larceny, and certainly can be prosecuted and is prosecuted. I just in my time when I was in the DA's office, I saw it get prosecuted quite a bit for people that would get pulled over and then say, my name is Harold Eustache, but really their name is Joe Smith, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're saying to an officer there's somebody else, and then Harold Eustache is charged, mm-hmm. not Joe Smith. And so there's a whole sort of rigmarole that happens when somebody steals somebody else's identity. But it's not just for charges. It can also be done when someone steals someone's identity and uses that to gain something, like uses a credit card or debit card.
Absolutely. I had a case one time where a person was accused of stealing someone else's identity, used that identity in the purchase of a very large item that you have to sign your name to at least 20 times. And every time on every single document that he signed that name was a new charge for identity theft. And that's how our laws look at it, mm-hmm. That each one of those is a separate time that you can sit there and go, okay, I'm choosing to sign this other name, not mine. And that's why each one of those is a separate charge, because each time you had the ability to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, those are felonious acts. Credit card fraud, also a felonious act.
We see it all the time.
I know. I mean, I had that happen one time at a restaurant where my information on my credit card was jotted down.
Me too.
And then used to buy all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Nice thing about a credit card company is if you bring that to their attention and you're able to just halfway show that there's no way you could have made those purchases, a credit card company will cover you for that. That's one of the benefits of having that kind of fraud protection associated with a credit card.
Another way we see it charged, I've seen it, is people in their personal lives and personal interactions. They're living in a house with somebody for whatever domestic situation, be it a family member, spouse, whoever, girlfriend, boyfriend, and they take that person's card without authorization and then use it.
Mm-hmm. And
that you can be charged with card fraud for. And I've seen it charged many times. And if somebody calls the police and says, well, even though this person's my sister, they took my card without authorization, they'd be charged for that. It happens quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And, those are all ways in which, you can be investigated for this type of fraud because, you're using something that doesn't belong to you to try to get some sort of monetary gain.
Right.
And that's the gist of it with fraud. And, the implications of that, again, it's a felony. Mm-hmm. All of them are felonies. I can't think of a version of fraud that's not.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings with it very serious consequences.
It does. And it's one of those things that this is the kind of thing that when we do consultations and talk to people, this is the kind of thing you don't want on your record. So we fight hard on every case, but it's certainly important to look out for this stuff. Do you have any suggestions for our viewers about how to protect themselves from this kind of fraud?
Just a few. First and foremost, make sure you get your mail as quickly as you can during the day.
Mm-hmm.
That's just one simple way. Pay attention to your bills and your credit card statements. Make sure there aren't any outside crazy charges that you don't remember. Now, every now and then you get, you actually did buy something,
Mm-hmm.
but you look on the bill and you're like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
That comes from that. That happens to me quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then I'll go back and I'll be like, oh yeah, I know what that is. Any security features on your technology devices, use them.
Mm-hmm.
Passwords, Face ID, whatever it is, make sure you use them. Another thing, don't carry your social security card around.
Mm-hmm.
Memorize that number. I know a lot of people that carry their social security card around. I think that blows my mind.
It is not smart.
Not at
Because
all.
it's very difficult to get back if you lose it.
Mine is in a locked safe.
Yep.
No one will ever get that, and look at your credit report. You can view that without dinging your credit card report.
Sure.
And then also another thing to think about is the use of public Wi-Fi. Public Wi-Fi isn't as secure, and if you're doing any kind of financial transactions, passwords, anything like that, you could subject yourself to potential issues.
We'd like to thank our WTOB listeners for joining us on For the Record with Greenwood Law. I'm Harold Eustache along with Dylan Greenwood. We were talking today about different types of theft during the holidays. We hope you can protect yourself and stay safe out there. But before we go, please take with you the Greenwood Law Bill of Rights. 1, I will not represent myself in a court of law. 2, I will not do law enforcement's job for them. 3, I will not make statements when stopped by law enforcement. 4, I will not consent to searches when stopped by law enforcement. And 5, I will not be my own star witness for the prosecution. It's not a crime to know your rights. Stay safe out there. Enjoy the holiday. This is For the Record with Greenwood Law signing off.